Okay. I think we're good. All right.
Okay.
So I'm Kim. You're Norma Jean. I'm going to ask some questions.
Okay, honey.
Okay. So last time we talked a little bit about your childhood. I didn't get your mom and dad's names.
Carl and Mary.
Mass.
Yes, Mass.
What was your mom's maiden name?
Deitzler.
Deichler.
Deitzcler, I think. Deitzler.
And were they born and raised in America?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I have questions. I was going through some of your old pictures. Ah, poop. Hee 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 hee. There you are. Okay. Who are these people?
That's my mother and father.
Okay. And then,
Yes.
oh, there's somebody just mopping the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
Who are these people?
That is Uncle Bob and me.
Uncle Bob and you.
Yeah. Bob Mass and Norma Mass.
Norman.
Bob had just got that car.
Really?
Yeah, he brought it out and showed it to me.
That's a good looking car. Okay. Is this your mom and dad too?
That was my mom and dad on their 50th wedding anniversary. We had a big party for them.
Awesome. Okay. Is this you?
Yes, that's me.
How old do you think you were?
Oh, I don't know, probably 15 or 16, I suppose. Probably 14 or 15. I'm not quite sure.
I couldn't tell if it was like your graduation picture.
No, I think it was at a carnival.
Really?
They had carnivals in town, and then we'd go down and get our picture taken.
All right. And who is this?
Okay, that was my best girlfriend, Lois Batten, and this was me.
You told me about Lois last time.
Yeah.
I love this. All right. Okay, so. Oh, I left my questions out in the car. Okay, so I'm supposed to ask. Let me think of what they were now, because now I can't remember. I have questions about when you grew up. So, did you have your own room?
My own room?
Yes.
I didn't have my own room until I was in high school, probably.
So, you guys had it probably, there was 9 of you kids, right?
Right.
So you probably had to share a room?
I did all growing up, yeah, until I was in high school, and then the older kids all moved away. And we lived in an old house that had 1 bedroom downstairs my mother slept in, and we had 2 bedrooms upstairs. My dad slept in one of them. Usually he went and slept in one of them, and I slept in the other one across the hallway.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What was,
Katie?
yeah, where was Katie at?
Well, Katie slept downstairs with Mom most
Yeah?
of the time. Yeah.
What were your chores like when you were little?
What?
Your chores. What did you have to do around the house?
Well, we really never had to do much of anything. We had to go out and carry water in from the well, and we had to go out and bring cobs in for the stove to burn, and we had to carry wood in for the stove to burn. We had to keep wood and cobs in there for the kitchen cook stove, and also for the heating stove in the living room.
Wow. So did you have electricity?
No. No radio, no TV, no electricity, and no telephone.
Oh my God, what did you do for fun?
Well, in the summertime, we roamed the hills. Bob and I and sometimes Gladys, but we would go out and walk in the fields that had been plowed and look for arrows because the Indians at one time had come through there. And we walked along the creek, and there was wild strawberries there that we picked and ate. And I don't know, we just didn't do much of anything.
All
Just
right.
kind of sat around. We had no games to play or anything like that. And
Do you ever think you told your mom you were bored? I'm bored.
I didn't know. I didn't know what bored meant. I didn't know what bored meant, so there was nothing to be bored about, you know. Didn't have any books to read, and so, you know, we went to school 9 months of the year, and in the summertime, like I say, that's what we did. And they always suckered me into doing everything. And we always had big windmills outside there. And, well, Norm, you climb up there first and see how high you can go. And so, like a dummy, I would go out and I would climb up the windmill, the little wooden or metal steps that went, and I would climb as high as until I got scared to death, and then I would back down all the way, and one of them would, and like I say, we mostly just were out in the fields walking and
Playing?
exploring is what we called it. We explored, and if we found any rocks or anything, why we'd take them home, and which didn't mean anything, you know, they weren't worth anything. So outside of that, why, I don't really remember.
Did you have a nickname when you were young?
Have what?
A nickname.
Yeah, they call me Nane.
Name?
Nane. Nane.
Name.
Nane. My name was Norma Jean, but they called me Nane when I was little, and that Nane stuck with me.
Really?
Yeah.
How did they come up with that?
I have no idea. It was just short for Norma Jean,
Norma
I
Jean.
guess. So Nane was my name.
Huh.
Bob had a tooth that stuck out up here, an extra tooth, and we called him Spur. And Gladys we called Broom because she coughed all the time. She coughed all the time, winter and summer. I think, well, and she had bronchitis a lot, and she had asthma, and so she was always coughing, and so they called her Brum. And of course I didn't name them because I was too little to know what it meant, but like I say, if there was anything daredevil, why they talked me into doing it, and I would do it just because I would get to go along with them and do whatever they wanted. And well, one time we lived in a little house that we lived across the road from the schoolhouse, and I was probably in the 5th or 6th grade, and my sister Gladys and my older brother Bob, they were all older than me, and Bob had a bicycle, and they wanted a bottle of pop. And they had scraped together 15 cents, and I don't know where they got it. But anyway, the only place they could get a bottle of pop was to go down about 2 miles or so, clear down to Iowa School for the Deaf. There was a little station right there. And so they talked me into riding Bob's bicycle clear down there to get a bottle of pop for 15 cents, and then I had to pedal Bob's bicycle clear back home. So, like I say, I was always suckered into doing things they didn't want to do. Well, let's let Nane do it. And Nane was sucker enough to do it.
Because you wanted to be part of their
Yeah, I
world.
wanted to be part of their world, and that's how I got to be part of their world. And but I got down there and back without being kidnapped or anything else, and I made it home.
Good.
And they enjoyed their pop.
So, where did Norma Jean come from? Were you named after anybody?
I have no idea. I was the 8th child in the family, and actually, at one time after I was married to Dad, to Jim, I needed my birth certificate for something or other, and I never had a birth certificate in my possession. And my oldest sister, Ethel, said, well, you should go down to Glenwood. That's where you were registered probably, and go down there to Glenwood and get your birth certificate. So she said she would drive me down there. So she and I went to Glenwood one day, and we went to the courthouse and had them look up the records, and I said, I want a copy of my birth certificate. So she looked in the registry down there under my date and the date I was born, March 20th, 1932, to Carl and Mary Mass, and there was only one person name, and that was Ruth Norma Jean.
What?
And Ethel said, what? And she said, we have down Ruth Norma Jean. And Ethel said, but that's not her name. Her name is Norma Jean. And she said, well, she said, it's here in black and white. It said Ruth Norma Jean. And Ethel says, well, how does she change that to her name now? And she said, well, if you want to sign a paper, she said, I will send that in to Des Moines. And she said, we can get Ruth taken off of there. And so that's what they did. And then I got my birth certificate that said Norma Jean Mass on it. And Ethel said, well, the old man was probably drunk when you were born, and that meant my dad was probably drunk when I was born. He was celebrating, and he probably just come up with Ruth, and maybe it was an old girlfriend of his, I don't know. But but anyway, my original birth certificate or my entry down there in Glenwood, where everything was entered, they had the right doctor. Dr. Young delivered me, and it was
Wow.
and my name was Ruth Norma Jean. So it was changed to Norma Jean then. So it was settled.
Wow. Where were you born?
I was born on a farm outside of Glenwood, someplace outside of Glenwood. I have no idea where.
Okay. I thought it was Silver City, so
No.
I didn't know that.
No, my parents lived on a farm or something down the other side of Glenwood, and that's where I was born. So,
What was one of your favorite meals that your mom made?
favorite meals? Oh, gee, I don't know. I don't know. I do remember at Christmas and Thanksgiving, we always raised ducks and chickens and that. And I do know that we always had roast duck for those times, and I love the duck.
Yeah.
But other times, we had a lot of bean soup with ham in it and ham hocks. And my mom made the best rye bread in the world, and she made rye bread, I think, every day, baked, because there was so many of us to feed. And she had a pan like this that was there was something in here and there was something in here, but you could put this whole thing in the oven and get 3 loaves of bread out. But she had a great big pan like this, and the bread would raise clear up like this, and she'd knead it down, and she was good at it. I mean, she was good at it. But she made the best rye bread. And there was only one kind of rye that my mom would use, and that was, well, I knew it.
It'll come.
But it was a special kind of rye. and that's the only thing that, and we would get it, I think, at Hinky Dinky store, and she would not buy any other kind of rye except that brand to make her rye bread.
Oh, now I wish I knew.
And then she also made what she called a coffee cake, and she made in pie pans. She would make up part of the bread dough, and she would put sugar in this wad of dough and raisins, and I don't think anything else. But then she would put this chunk of stuff in there, and it would raise up, and then she put sugar and cinnamon on top of it, and that was called coffee cake, and it was always delicious. Us kids just went wild over that, you know. But she didn't make it every time, and I don't know why, because she knew us kids really did like it. And so that was, like I say, her bread and her coffee cake was just extra, extra good. And
Can you think of any life lessons that your parents taught you that have stayed with you?
well, every time I went out at night with anybody, my mom, of course, my oldest brother was killed in a car accident. My mom would say, "Be careful and don't drive fast," as if I was driving. You know, I never drove in my life till I got married, but she would always say, "Be careful and don't drive fast." And we'd say, "Okay, Mom, we won't." Then we'd get in the car and go like hell.
So you ignored her.
Well, we couldn't help it because we weren't driving, so that was it.
What
But
about your dad? Did he teach you anything that you remember?
no, he was just a farmer and didn't do much, didn't know much, but he was a terrific gardener.
Yeah.
He always raised tremendous vegetables and stuff like that. And he raised tomatoes and potatoes and carrots and muskmelon, and he just sweet corn and cucumbers, and we had everything like that. So in the summertime we always had plenty of good food to eat.
Absolutely.
A lot of times we were lucky enough to live on a farm or rent a place that had fruit trees. And I remember one acreage we lived on, and it had apricot trees on it, and they were huge, and they were good, and we were always out there eating the apricots off the trees and that. And so anyway,
How did your mom and dad die? When did they die?
well, my mom was in the hospital. There was a Dr. Angel who was from Mexico or someplace, and he wasn't a good doctor. He had trouble with both hospitals, I think. And anyway, my Aunt Clara worked at one of the hospitals, and I think it was the Mercy Hospital. But anyway, he would put people in there so that he could collect, I think, Social Security from Social Security. I think that's what it was. He was screwing the government somehow or other. And so he put Mom in the hospital for something or other. And she was supposed to come home from the hospital. And he said, "I'll keep you one more day." He said, "I want to cut your toenails tomorrow." And so well, what could she do? She stayed. But that night, he came into the nurse's station, and he said, "Give her such and such." And the nurse, whoever she was, this is what we heard afterwards, because Aunt Clara her mom's sister worked up there as a nurse's aide at the time, and Aunt Clara said that she didn't know anything about it at the time, of course. But anyway, Dr. Angel came in and left an order for a high dosage of something to give my mother. And the nurses looked at each other after he walked away, and they said this would kill an elephant if we gave this much to anybody. And they did not give her that much. They gave her what the normal dosage. And they don't know if he came in afterwards and gave her that dosage or not. But anyway, it was the day after my birthday, and we were eating supper and the phone rang, and it was a hospital, and they said, Norma Marr, and I said yes, and they said, this is Mercy Hospital, and your mother just passed away.
Wow.
And of course they had down to call Ethel, Harold, or Irvin, or Bob first, never me. I was youngest. I was always the last on the list. But they were all out for supper. And so, anyway, I was the one that got called. And I said, when? And they said, just a little bit ago. And I said, I'll be right there. So I went up to the hospital, and I went up to the room where she was at and asked if I could see her, and they said yes, and I went in, and she was still in the bed there. And there was a Monsignor David Saver from Holy Family Church, and I had seen him up there, and I went out and asked him if, I said, my mother just passed away. I said, I'm Catholic, but she is not. She is Lutheran. I said, will you come in and say some prayers for her? He said, of course I will. So he and I went into her room, and he said prayers for my mom. She was gone. She was, I think 82 or something like that.
How old were you?
Huh?
How old were you?
I was, I had just had a birthday the day before. I don't know. And so anyway, I don't remember who I might have called Gladys and out at Carson, and of course she got a hold of the rest of them that had been out to eat. But I did get to see my mom and tell her goodbye. And then I went home because I had little kids at home. I don't remember. They were all little, and I don't remember. Jimmy was probably a little over a year old. And so anyway, we all went to Carson that night, and to John and Gladys's, and sat there and talked and discussed that the funeral home out of Carson would go in and bring Mom out, and I think that that was the night that something was said. I said, well, I want you to know, I said, or they said something about saying some prayers for Mom, and I said, well, I had Monsignor David Saver come in and say some prayers for her while he was there, and of course that made him mad. Oh, they got all upset because they were Lutherans and they didn't want a Catholic priest coming in there. So anyway, I did what I did for my mother, and then that was it. And then I think I rode out with Marianne that night. And anyway, there was something that Katie did or said, and I got upset about it. And I think I drove home, and it seemed like Marianne rode with me, and we were talking about it, and she said, "Well, I'll tell you one thing." She said, "If it comes between you and Kate," she said, "I'll stick up for Katie."
Oh my goodness.
She said that to me, and I don't know why. But anyway, and so then my dad was alone, and then he got sick and couldn't take care of himself. And that's one thing I'll give your Grandpa Jim credit for, because Dad had no place to take a bath. He wouldn't have taken a bath. He was just a dirty old man was what he was. And Jim said, well, let's go get him. He says, we'll bring him in here and he can live with us. Well, we went out and got him, and he smelled so bad that your Grandpa Jim told him to get in the bathtub. Well, he wouldn't go get in the bathtub, and Jim said, "You get the hell in that bathtub." He says, "I'm going to give you a bath," and he did. He gave my dad a bath and cleaned him up.
Oh my gosh.
And shaved him and everything. And
wow.
Wow. So he stayed there we kept him for 2 or 3 days, and I said, I can't do it. I can't have him here. I can't take care of
little ones plus your dad. And
yeah, I said I can't take care of him and the kids and the family. I don't want him here any longer. So anyway, it was discussed, and they got him into a rest home up here, and he lived up here until he was 80-some years old. He lived in a rest home up here for I don't know how many years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was up at the Council Bluffs Care Center, which I think is now Midlands.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know why. I guess with you saying how much he drank, I wasn't expecting him. I figured he would have died young from. Whoops.
Damn. I'm sorry.
You're fine.